Hey everyone. So I know mostly when I'm on my ex-cult mum TikTok, I'm talking about, I suppose a lot of it's about what my life was like when I was in a cult and what it's been like losing my children, my family and everything. But I just wanted to talk about something else that I suppose I've just come to the realization of. There's things that I thought I'd faced, that we were taught in the cult, that really are still there, and it's just been interesting to sort of look at that and why that has happened, and maybe help others as well to understand that, yeah, these things that we've been conditioned take a long time, especially at my age. I was 44 when I managed to escape the cult, having been born into it. So that's like 44 years of indoctrination, and yeah, and I was fourth generation, so my parents were indoctrinated and so on and so forth. So it's really, how do we get rid of some of these indoctrinations? And the one I wanted to talk about today was what we were taught within the cult, that when somebody becomes ill or something happens, whether it be an accident or even down to, as small a thing as cutting your finger, you had to look at, well, why? What's God telling me? And it was always looking at the negative, what sin have I done that I deserve this? And I know I spent all my life in fear of that, of God's punishment, in fear of, because I suppose I knew I wasn't 100% committed. I wasn't fully believing what I was being told. So I was all the time, well, what if they're right and I'm punished? As a child, it was, my parents would be taken from me. As I got older, it was, something. Well, certainly after I got married, it was like, I constantly worried that something would happen to my children. I was constant on edge, anxiety about, what if they had a car accident and they were killed and it was because of me and I was being punished? And I suppose I've thought, especially, I know that stayed with me quite a long time. I had recognised that, but what I hadn't recognised it was that when things happen now, it's still there. And even though I'm telling myself logically that's rubbish, we're taught that if you leave the PBCC, the exclusive brethren, that something will happen to you. So, when I got my first diagnosis of cancer back in 2014, when that was just a year after I'd escaped, obviously for my family and everybody, they just thought I would go back, because they thought that I was like, okay, this is what happens. There's Anne. She left. She turned against God and she turned against us. Not turning against my family, but turning against the religion, the cult. And there she is. She's now got cancer. At that time, I suppose I was such a recent leaver that I had so much fight in me. I suppose that's it. And I was so out to prove them wrong. And that, I think that's how I fought the cancer at the time, was just being, instead of looking at the negative, I was being positive. What's the positive out of this? This is another chance at life for me if I survive this. And I did survive it, which I think that was a bit of a shock to some of them, to be honest. They thought because I didn't listen. In fact, my father said, the last time he spoke to me face to face, he said, "You haven't listened to God speaking through your cancer. Therefore, we can't have any more to do with you." It's like, okay, if you don't accept that, we're going to punish you and cut you off even more. And so I suppose I thought from there that I was really over that thought of God's punishment. But over the years, there's been things happen, and I'm sure there are things that lots of people have happen in their lives. There might just be little things, but every time it happens, something like that happens, I'm realizing now that indoctrination is still actually there a little bit. I'm still questioning, are they right? Are they right? And I'm still looking for the why it's happened. So with my recent diagnosis, that has really come to light. I know, logically, absolutely logically, in my head, I know it's rubbish. But there's this tiny little bit of you that goes, but then why? Why have these things happened? And I just think I need to learn that there doesn't need to be a why. Things happen. There doesn't need to be a why. And it's not about God's punishment. But I just didn't realise, after 12 years, and I suppose that if you think about it, 12 years out of, all of my life, I'm 56. 12 years isn't long, really. That's just like a 12-year-old, isn't it? Coming out, being in the normal world. And so, it's just, I find it interesting to realise in recently having gone through therapy that's still there. It's almost like there's this little thing on my shoulder saying, see, we told you. See, we told you. And I'd really love help as to how to overcome that, I suppose. And like I say, it's not, I don't believe it, that God's punishing me. I don't even know what I believe as far as, I believe there's something bigger than me. What that is, I don't know. What is it? It's certainly not the God that we were taught about, who punishes. I just wanted to sort of talk about that, and it might help others that come out of situations as well. I don't mean necessarily this actual indoctrination about God's punishment, but we're so conditioned from birth in the circumstances we find ourselves in, and I suppose it's recognizing that and understanding that it is possible to change, and I suppose the first thing for me is that I've recognized that is still there. So how can I change that? That's really what I'm going through at the minute. How can I get totally rid of that thought and not let it affect my life going forward? Because I honestly believe thinking like that and the negativity of that probably attracts more negativity into my life. And as I say, things happen, but I suppose it's just like having cancer a second time. Of course, there's lots of people have cancer a second time, but it's just like, I can't help hearing those words of my dad. You didn't listen to God speaking to you through your cancer. You went on in your own self-willed way. You've carried on. We could never have anything to do with that. And then, you get it again. And here I have. I've survived it. It wasn't as bad as last time. It's not that I'm not surviving it, but it's just those negative thoughts. Anyway, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit now, but it's just something that I wanted to put on here and get other people's feelings about it. How do you overcome those real deep-seated indoctrination things that we were taught from birth, and change our way of thinking? Okay, that's my little chatter for today. Bye.